The fourth launch of South Korea's homegrown space rocket Nuri was a complete success, with all the main payload of the 13 satellites deployed in full communication with the ground. Reflecting on his recent trip to the Middle East and Africa, President Lee Jae-myung has stressed the global interest and the importance of Korea's defense industry amid global instability. The Bank of Korea has decided to leave its interest rate as it is to safeguard financial stability amid a weakened local currency and an unstable local housing market. The central bank believes South Korea's economy will expand by 1.8% in 2026.
5, 4, 3, 2, 엔진 점화.
We begin with a major milestone in South Korea's space program. The country successfully launched its homegrown rocket Nuri in the early hours of Thursday morning, placing more than a dozen satellites into orbit. Our correspondent Park Go-nu tells us more.
3, 2, 1. Off Korea's homegrown Nuri rocket goes, soaring into space for its fourth mission. Lifting off from Gyeonggung County in Jeollanam province in the country's southwest at 1:13 a.m. on Thursday. This liftoff came 18 minutes later than scheduled, after an abnormal signal was detected in the umbilical retraction pressure sensor. But despite concerns over the delay, Nuri thundered into the sky with confidence, as if proving itself once again. The mission's success was confirmed about 90 minutes later as the main satellite among the 13 satellites on board reached an orbit of 601.3 kilometers, well within the 600-kilometer target in the 6% error range.
Following the successful third launch, the fourth mission has further strengthened Nuri's reliability and reaffirmed Korea's autonomous space development capabilities. Nuri will conduct 2 additional flights through 2027 to enhance its technical stability and performance.
He added that Korea will also push forward with the next-generation launch vehicle, building on the technology and experience gained from the Nuri program. And beyond its success, this fourth launch drew special attention as it was the first time Nuri ever flew at night. As this marks the first nighttime launch among all previous Nuri rocket projects, today's mission has even greater significance, providing ideal conditions for the main satellite to observe auroras. Launching at night was intentional, as nighttime conditions helped the main satellite enter the perfect orbit for aurora observation. The mission also saw more satellites than ever before, 13 in total, up from the 7 carried in the previous launch 2.5 years ago. Adding to the milestone, this fourth vehicle was manufactured entirely by the private company Hana Aerospace, marking a major step in Korea's shift toward a private sector-driven launch system and a deeper transfer of space technology. With today's achievement, excitement is already building for the next 2 Nuri missions in the coming years, in 2026 and 2027. Park Go-nu, Arirang News, Gohung.
And President Lee Jae-myung has congratulated those involved in the successful fourth launch of South Korea's Nuri rocket. At a weekly meeting with his top aides on Thursday, President Lee expressed his gratitude to everyone involved, noting that it was the first of Nuri's 4 launches to be carried out as a public-private partnership led by Hanwha Aerospace with government support. He pledged that the government will step up efforts to help Korea become a space powerhouse and build an environment where scientists and researchers receive the respect they deserve. Staying at the top office, President Lee has also stressed the importance of Korea's defense industry on the global stage as he returned home from a long overseas trip. Yoon Jung-min reports.
President Lee Jae-myung opened the weekly meeting with his senior aides on Thursday by noting global interest in South Korea's defense industry the day after returning home from his 10-day-long trip to the Middle East and Africa that also took him to the G20 summit in South Africa.
국제 질서가 점점 불안정해지고 또 자국 이기주의가 심해지다 보니까 국가 간 대결 양상도 점차 심각해져 갑니다. 그래서 그런지 이 방위 산업과 무기 체계에 대한 관심들이 매우 높다고 판단이 되었습니다.
He added that he felt the horrors of the war-torn Gaza Strip during his trip to the MENA region. Given such a situation, it was no coincidence that the arms industry and weapons topped the agenda as the South Korean leader met his foreign counterparts during the trip. President Lee called for unity by the people to raise the nation's economic, defense, and diplomatic capabilities, apparently mindful of division and conflict at home.
지금 있는 역량을 최대한 모아서 국제사회 질서 속에서 경쟁을 하더라도 매우 부족한데 불필요하게 우리 자신의 역량을 낭비하는 일이 최소화되면 좋겠다는 생각이.
The South Korean president, who's just 6 months into his presidency, has had a busy diplomatic schedule throughout the year as he either attended or hosted major multilateral dialogue, engaging with the G7, UN, ASEAN, APEC, and G20 members at a time of deepening global uncertainties.
이 과정에서 정부는 대한민국의 글로벌 외교를 복원시키기 위해서 모든 노력과 역량을 투입했습니다. 그 결과 우리 외교의 위상이 한층 높아지고 외교 지평도 크게 넓어졌다는 게 체감되었습니다.
He instructed his aides to work together with relevant ministries to materialize deliverables that were yielded through his summit diplomacy during the past half year. Lee has been stressing pragmatic diplomacy centered on national interests since taking office, with a focus on bolstering cooperation with the global community on AI, cutting-edge technologies, defense industry, and K-culture. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
South Korea's central bank has kept its key rate at 2.5% amid currency volatility and financial stability concerns while raising its growth outlook. Our correspondent Moon Ji-young has more.
The Bank of Korea has once again held its key interest rate at 2.5%, continuing with its easing cycle pause for a fourth straight meeting amid rising concerns over currency volatility and financial stability risks. This decision follows the final Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the year on Thursday.
Although inflation has inched higher and uncertainty over the growth outlook persists, consumption and exports continue to improve, and financial stability risks remain. Given these conditions, we judge that maintaining the current policy rate while closely assessing domestic and external developments is appropriate.
The move comes as the Korean won has slipped into the upper 1,400 won range against the dollar, a 7-month low. Officials say a rate cut could add pressure to the currency amid uncertainty about U.S. monetary policy and strong dollar demand from overseas investment. Household debt and house prices, especially in the Seoul metropolitan area, also remain key concerns. On the same day, the central bank also released its updated economic outlook. It now expects the economy to grow 1% this year and 1.8% next year, slightly higher than its August forecast.
We expect exports and facilitated investment to grow more than initially forecast, largely due to the conclusion of the Korea-U.S. trade negotiations and a strong global semiconductor market. On the consumption side as well, expansionary fiscal policy and improving economic sentiment are expected to accelerate the pace of recovery.
Even so, the bank cautions that uncertainty remains, particularly regarding the global trade environment and the speed of the semiconductor recovery. Inflation is now projected at 2.1% for both this year and next year, reflecting the weaker won and a modest pickup in domestic demand. The bank expects inflation to stay above its 2% target for now, with the outlook hinging largely on exchange rate movements and global energy prices. The Korea-U.S. key rate gap currently stands at 1.5%. With the U.S. Federal Reserve meeting next month, markets are watching closely for any shift in U.S. rate policy. The Bank of Korea is maintaining a cautious stance, and while rate cuts remain on the table, any further move will depend on growth, inflation, and financial stability in the coming months. 문지영, Arirang News.
Naver, South Korea's largest search engine, and Dunamu, the operator of the country's biggest crypto exchange Upbit, have announced a massive investment in AI and Web3 technology. This comes just a day after the companies began merger proceedings, which incorporates Dunamu into the Naver Group. Ian-jin has the details.
Naver, the operator of South Korea's largest internet portal, its fintech subsidiary Naver Financial, which handles the country's largest annual payment volume of over 30 trillion won, and Dunamu, the operator of the country's biggest crypto exchange Upbit, held a joint press conference Thursday morning and said they will invest 10 trillion Korean won, or nearly $7 billion over the next 5 years, as they seek to better respond to rapidly changing global tech trends. This announcement follows each of the three companies holding board meetings on Wednesday to approve the merger that would incorporate Dunamu into the Naver Group through a comprehensive stock swap, and said they will consolidate each company's capabilities to pursue global expansion. The three companies said they plan to work together on designing a next-generation financial infrastructure that combines AI and blockchain technology, intending to establish a new platform that extends beyond payments that can cover the broader financial sector and even everyday lifestyle services. When the merger of the three companies is completed, the deal will create a mega fintech company with a combined value of 20 trillion won. The merger would extend Naver's influence from search, content, e-commerce, and fintech into the cryptocurrency sector. Ian-jin, Arirang News.
We now turn to a critical debate reshaping the nation's economy. As South Korea races to lead in the AI revolution, the industry warns that a 43-year-old regulation, the strict separation of banking and commerce, is blocking the massive investment needed to survive. Our Kim Do-yeon is here to break it down. Do-yeon, let's start with the basics. What exactly is this regulation?
Right. To simply put, the separation of banking and commerce is something that prevents industrial companies from owning banks and banks from owning industrial companies. Now, it has been the bedrock of our financial system for over 43 years, like you said. The primary goal is to prevent powerful conglomerates or chaebars from treating financial affiliates as their private ATMs. The fear is that if a manufacturing giant owns a bank, it might use depositors' money to bail out failing subsidiaries, putting the entire financial system at risk.
Well, Do-yeon, it does sound like a necessary safety net. Now, if it's been around for decades, why is it suddenly a hot potato?
Now, it all comes down to the sheer scale of the investment required. Now, we're entering an era where conventional funding methods can't really keep up with the investments needed to boost AI technology, right? So the debate intensified last month after President Lee Jae-myung met with OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, alongside leaders from Samsung and SK, the two biggest chip makers in the country, of course, and among the top in the world. Now, following that meeting, the president signaled that the status quo was no longer sustainable. Take a listen.
The president stated that we must fully discuss this regarding limited sectors and approach the matter from a highly pragmatic perspective.
Now, that word pragmatic is key. Under current laws, general holding companies are banned from owning financial investment firms. This effectively blocks them from quickly raising the liquid capital needed for agile tech investments.
Well, Do-yeon, you mentioned astronomical cost. Just how big of a funding gap are we talking about here?
Right. There is a massive disconnect. Some in the government argue that its new National Growth Fund worth about 150 trillion won or $107 billion is sufficient. But the industry argues this is a drop in the bucket. To build just 1 gigawatt scale data center costs 70 trillion won. That's around $50 billion. So the government's entire fund would barely cover 2 centers, while competitors such as the US and China are building hundreds of these. Now, SK Chairman Choi Tae-won, also head of the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry, expressed frustration that their request is being misunderstood.
Our message is being distorted, as if we are just complaining about a lack of funds or demanding that the separation of banking and commerce be scrapped. That is not our intention. We are simply asking for a new system capable of handling this scale of investment.
So the current financial pipes are just too narrow, yet there's still a strong opposition. Who are they?
Right, the opposition is strong, coming from both civic groups and the country's top regulator. Now, civic groups like Economic Reform Solidarity argue that loosening these rules is a tailored favor for SK Group. Unlike Samsung or Hyundai, SK operates under a structure with a holding group that limits its ability to mobilize cash. Critics ask why the nation's economic backbone should be altered just to solve one conglomerate's liquidity issue. Then there is the Fair Trade Commission. FTC Chair Ju Byung-gi has drawn a hard line stating we must not shake the backbone of the economic system. Instead of amending the General Fair Trade Act, he suggests a compromise, a temporary special act strictly limited to strategic industries or using special purpose vehicles to raise funds without full deregulation. Right now, the rule prohibits groups from not only owning banks, but also special investment firms as well.
So the regulator offers a detour but refuses to tear down the wall, right? Finally, how does this compare to other major economies, namely, the United States?
Right. Actually, the U.S. is strictly separating banks and commerce to protect its banking system, and it's actually where the idea comes from. However, the market reality is different. U.S. tech giants like Microsoft or Google have such immense cash reserves and access to diverse capital markets that they don't need to own banks. In Korea, the market is smaller and companies rely more on loans. That's why our companies feel the restriction of this law much more acutely than their American counterparts.
I see. Toyeon, thank you so much for the comprehensive coverage tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Now, turning to the National Assembly, a plenary session kicked off this afternoon to address a number of bills, including a high-profile motion to arrest the former floor leader of the main opposition party. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
The National Assembly held a vote on a motion to arrest Chu Kyung-ho, the former floor leader of the People Power Party. The session began at 2 p.m. on Thursday, and the vote on the motion, conducted by anonymous secret ballot, passed with 172 votes in favor, 4 against, 2 abstentions, and 2 invalid ballots out of 180 lawmakers present. Chu was accused of interfering with the Assembly's vote to lift the December 3rd martial law declaration last year. Under the Constitution, sitting lawmakers cannot be arrested or detained during a session without parliamentary consent. When prosecutors seek an arrest warrant for a lawmaker during a session, a motion to arrest must be approved by the Assembly. The motion passes with a majority of lawmakers present and a majority of those present voting in favor. As the ruling Democratic Party supporting the motion holds the majority, its approval was widely expected. With the motion approved, Chu will undergo a hearing in court, where he will face a pre-arrest interrogation to determine whether a detention warrant will be issued, a session expected to be scheduled for early next month. Lawmakers also reviewed 7 public welfare bills, including the so-called K-Steel Act, which would establish a presidential committee to strengthen the nation's steel industry and provide subsidies, loans, and tax benefits for green steel technology and investment. The Democratic Party had initially sought to pass around 90 bills, but reached a compromise with the People Power Party to take up the remaining measures alongside the national budget on December 2nd. National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik urged both parties to prioritize public welfare over political clashes as the budget deadline nears.
Instead of sparring, I ask both parties to do their best until the end to secure every possible budget for the people.
The session took place amid heightened tensions over calls for a parliamentary investigation into the Daejang-dong real estate scandal in Seongnam during President Lee Jae-myung's tenure as mayor. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
South Korea's AK and Cheonghae units will continue to be deployed for 1 more year. Now, this as the National Assembly Defense Committee approved a motion on Thursday to extend their deployments until the end of next year. The AK unit was dispatched to the UAE in 2011 to strengthen military cooperation between the two countries. Now, a Cheonghae unit was dispatched in 2009 to the Gulf of Aden under a UN Security Council resolution and has been extended considering the need to secure safety along major maritime routes and to expand defense cooperation with a partner such as the European Union. In other news, a ferocious fire engulfed a compound of high-rise residential towers in northern Hong Kong, killing dozens of people and leaving hundreds still missing. Our Park Jun-han has more.
At least 55 people have died and hundreds are still missing after a major fire tore through several high-rise residential buildings in Hong Kong's northern Tai Po neighborhood. Authorities expect that the death toll may rise as many people who were recovered are severely injured, as well as those still missing. The fire broke out on Wednesday at the Wong Puk Court housing complex, a cluster of 8 blocks with almost 2,000 apartments, which are home to more than 4,600 residents, nearly 40% of them elderly. Hundreds of residents had to be evacuated after the fire spread across 7 of the 8 towers. While the direct cause of the fire is unknown, investigators claim that certain materials on the building's exterior walls did not meet fire resistance criteria. In what appears to be the city's deadliest fire since World War II, the authorities said they will make every effort to halt the blaze.
I take this incident with the utmost seriousness. I have instructed all government departments and units to make every effort on multiple fronts. Our top priority is to extinguish the fire and rescue the trapped residents.
As the search for missing persons in the ongoing fire continues, Chinese leader Xi Jinping expressed his condolences and has allocated 2 million yuan, or around 410 million Korean won, to Red Cross emergency aid. The U.S. Consulate General in Hong Kong and Macau and the British Foreign Secretary offered their condolences on social media to those affected by the deadly fire. As the fire spread in what the authorities described as an unusual manner, a criminal investigation was launched, and 3 men from the building's construction company were arrested on suspicion of manslaughter. They include 2 directors and a consultant accused of gross negligence. While rescue efforts are still ongoing, evacuated survivors are painfully awaiting the fate of their missing loved ones. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
It has rained in most areas, with some snow in areas where temperatures are low. Heavy snow of up to 10 centimeters will pile up in the mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province. With a heavy snow advisory in place, this rain and snow will stop by tonight. However, a freezing cold spell is forecast for the whole country tomorrow morning. Morning temperature in Seoul will plunge below zero at -1 degree. Around the coastal and mountainous areas, it will feel even colder with gusty winds. Tomorrow morning, we will cool nationwide with Chuncheon at -4, Gyeongju at 1 degree. During the day, temperatures will rise to up to around 10 degrees across the country. Saturday night, it will rain again in the north and center parts of the country. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.